Hey there, this is Tim. I'm one of the partners in Paragon Partners, and in this video, it's 10 good eBay hits I've had and 7 misses I've had. I've made and lost money overall. I'm ahead, but still I took some unpleasant hits along the way. Now, I watch a lot of videos on how to sell on eBay, as you probably do too. And overall, they're a good source of information, but of course, my experience does differ from these other sellers. I wouldn't expect to be exactly in alignment. Likewise, I wouldn't expect you to be exactly in alignment with my results. But I want to go over the results of what I had so you can make wiser decisions and see if it's something that you should follow or learn from. First eBay item I've done well on is iPods. Now, you wouldn't think iPods would be a seller because, of course, people now, they're using their smartphone to store all their songs on, and this is 10-year-old technology. However, I still have no problems getting 20 to 40 bucks a piece for these decade-old technology. People still like them, and people still use them. I've never had a no sale on one of these yet. Second, vintage computer tapes and tape drives. Now, if you can find the tapes still new sealed, which is rare, but if they've never been used, boy, those are always sellers. If it's a used tape, then not so much. But the tape drives themselves are also good sellers. I believe what's going on is there's a lot of old government computer systems still out there, and those guys, when their tape drives burn out, well, it's not like they can upgrade to a new computer. They have to buy replacements, and eBay is the only place they can buy this 20 to 30-year-old technology. And so these old tapes, they're still used by a lot of the government institutions, and if you can find them, they want them. Third, vintage sewing patterns. Now, two biggies. First of all, is they need to be uncut. So they can't be used. And the newest that they can be is from like the 1980s. If you go from the 50s and 60s, those are big. And then they need to be the big names as well, such as like Vogue or McCall's. Some of the no names, they don't do so well. But I've seen some at the very, very high end from famous designers who only put out a couple. The most they can go for is $100. You wouldn't expect to get that much out of a vintage sewing pattern. Now, you can go ahead and buy these at thrift stores for usually less than $1. And the right pattern goes for, I've had it go for $5 to $15. So, of course, making $5, that's not a lot, but if you only got $1 into it, you just made 5 times your money. You can see if you can keep on flipping that, you're doing okay. So, like I said, it's got to be uncut, no newer from the 80s, and make sure it's one of the good names, and you'll do all right. Next are vintage buttons. Boy, people love to buy collections of old buttons. And what I found is there's kind of a hierarchy. So the wood buttons, not so much. The plastic buttons, that's a little better, especially if the plain buttons people don't want so much, but if they're a little more fancy plastic, then they're better. Then more than that, people seem to want the metal buttons that have a little bit of glitter, texture, and substance. Those do really well. And then what I find that people want the most are military buttons. Buttons used on military coats that have some insignia on them. Boy, people love those. So if you can get a hold of old buttons, you're doing well. I've seen people, they'll buy jars of these, they'll buy bags, and just sell them by the pound, and you can do pretty well. Next, vintage linens. This is one I've never really understood, but I've seen old ladies do great in this category. It's not so much blankets, but it's old tablecloths, pillowcases, sheets, and napkins. And if they're from the 1970s or older, you can do pretty well. And I've been surprised. I've seen people do thrift store pickups for a couple bucks and flip them for 20 to 30. I mean, they're getting 10 times what they paid for them. Now, of course, the two biggies are you can't have any stains, you can't have any yellowing, and you can't have any tears, rips, or holes in them. But as long as you take care of that, vintage linens can be a real money maker. And this is one item which is actually pretty easy to pick up at your thrift store. Next are car badges. So this is another hot one. So I've had common car badges from like a Chevy Nova or a Dodge Charger go for 15 to 25 bucks. If you have them in the pairs, that's even better. And when you get into the rare badges for the older automobiles or even the motorcycles, you can be in the $50 to $100 range. And I've been surprised at how well people can do in the car badges. And of course, you think about it, it kind of makes sense that this is the insignia piece. This is what everyone looks for when they look at a car. And so, of course, people want this piece to shine out. So if you can do well on badges, this can be a real money maker as well. Vintage scientific glassware. Of course, the more exotic it is, the more you can get for it. And the old beakers, so-so. You know, I've done $5 to $7 each. And on some of the more elaborate, which has multiple chambers or burners, you know, I've done 20 each. Now, the one caveat is that this can be a pain to ship, because I've spent a lot just in the shipping to get the package ready and all the cushioning to go with it. But as long as you're prepared for the extra doing and shipping, then you can do pretty well in this category. Real tape players. Now, this is another one where I've really killed it. Of course, no one's making any new tape players, but they still have a lot of old tapes around. And so if you have a good tape player, you can do pretty well on this. This is kind of goes along with the resurgence of vinyl, that people want these warmer sounds and they're looking for this old hi-fi fidelity equipment. And on the right tape player, I've never sold it for less than $100. Again, they can be a pain to ship because they're very big and heavy, but the money can be there. Art canvases. Now, when I talk about art canvases, I mean blank art canvases. People are always looking for the blank ones to do their next painting on, and these are pretty pricey at art stores. And so if you're able to get good art canvases and offer a deal on them, I've had no problem selling these. And lastly, digital cameras. This is another one where I've done pretty well on unexpectedly. Now, of course, you think that everyone would be on their smartphone and they wouldn't need these. And I'll say these don't sell for a lot, but I have no problems picking these up for no more than $1. And I can usually flip them from $5 to $15. If you go ahead and list these, of course, the more completeness you have, the better value you're going to get. Always make sure you document if it has a memory card and the battery and the charger with it. You have all those components, you can do a lot more. So you think I'm doing pretty good with these. I made money. Of course, I've also had my share of hits. The first one is old glasses. This is one I thought I'd do pretty well on. People are into the retro thing, and especially like the old cat eyes. And I haven't. Now, I have no doubts that other people have done well when they know what they're doing and have been able to specialize in this. But I've tried picking up some old ones at thrift stores, big variety, and they just fall apart. They bust. I haven't done anything on old glasses, either men's or women's. Next, cutlery. This is another one that I've done to do pretty well on, but I didn't. And I think for two reasons. First, the low end, it's way too popular. It's too easy. There's too many Chinese cheapies out there. There's too many good knockoffs, and it's so easy to get these in bulk for next to nothing at your thrift store. So no one's interested in them. Then you have the very, very high end, those that are used by the professional chefs. And those guys, they want to make sure they know what they're getting, their sharpness and their quality. And so they want to buy from a more known source. And so I found it difficult to make money in this particular niche. Next, collector plates. But this is one I've absolutely bombed out on. I should know, if you see something called collector, well, it really isn't. I had a guy who bought a big wad of these from another person. They had the box, they had the certificates. He bought them for $20 each, which is what about the normal retail price was. And he could even unload them at $2 each. Remember, that's new in box with the certificates. This was kind of a big deal. It came out in the 80s, and then the field just got oversold. And now it's just a bunch of trash that nobody wants. This is one that I haven't seen anybody make any money on. old CBs, you think that these would be pretty good. There's a little bit of a resurgent. This was big in the 70s, and people kind of want to relive this. And what I found is that people, they pretty much, it has to be a full package. It has to be with the bracketing system, with the wiring harness, and it also has to be with the documentation. And then unused or not used much. So if you're doing that, you can do pretty good. But if you just have an old CB, even if you show it working, people, they're only going to pay $1 to $3 for it. Old CBs by themselves, they're not a big money maker. Lego knockoffs. Now, of course, Legos, they're a great hit, very popular. And you think, well, geez, why not the knockoff product like Mega Low Blocks? What I found is that the knockoffs get only about 20 to 30% of the value of the actual Lego product itself. The Lego name, it still has a lot of cachet. It's what people want. It's what the purists want, and that's what they're willing to pay for. And therefore, the used Lego knockoffs, they don't have that much value behind them. Christmas decorations. Now, this should be an obvious one. You see all these Christmas decorations, they look kind of pricey at the store, and you think, okay, this would be a good thing. And you have your tree ornaments, your little villages, and your Christmas trees, and so on. Of course, there's a big flood of them for sale after January, and nobody wants them. Not only that, but the glass can be a pain to ship. It's very delicate. The Christmas decoration field, it's purely flooded. There's a lot of overselling in this field. And lastly, DVD players. Now, I've done fairly good on VHS players. That people, they want the good VHS players for the tapes. You think, well, okay, next step up is the DVD players. People want these. I haven't hit a good field on these yet. You can buy these for about $5 each at a thrift store, and you sell them for about $3 on eBay, not to mention all your fees and your shipping hassle. People, they just don't want the DVD players. If they're going to play a DVD, they're going to stick it in their computer. And the DVD players don't take off at all. So, that's what I've had with eBay. And I'd be very curious to hear if your experience is similar or different to mine. Take care.